Final roster cuts had to be made today by 3 p.m. Central Time, so that means the Vikings have their initial 53-man roster officially set in stone. Not really set in stone because there can be players that are picked up on the waiver wire and added, and then other people cut, dreams kind of thrown in the garbage and stuff like that. But right now, we're going to take a look at the initial 53-man roster for our Minnesota Vikings. At any point, you guys can let me know in the comments what you think about this. Should we have kept somebody? Should we have gotten rid of somebody? Stuff like that. We'll take a look at the offense first and then move our way to the defense. So let's take a look at our 53-man roster, starting with the offense. Obviously, Kirk Cousins, Nick Mullins, and Jaren Hall, all three quarterbacks are on the 53-man roster. This is the first year where teams can have three quarterbacks basically on the roster going into the season. One of them will not dress if he needs to. It's because Kirk Cousins or the first stringer did go down. But those are our three quarterbacks. For running backs, Alexander Mattison, Kene Nwangwu, and Ty Chandler made the roster. Thank goodness. Ty Chandler going to be the backup running back, at least in my opinion. I think that is what the Vikings need to do. I really liked what I seen out of him in preseason. Kene Nwangwu needs to stay at special teams unless he's an absolute dog at running back. But we didn't really get to see anything of him this preseason, so hopefully we get to get a little taste of what it's like for Kene Nwangwu out on that field. At fullback, CJ Ham made the roster, probably his last year with the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see how that kind of transpires. The league is moving away from fullbacks, but CJ Ham is a longtime Viking. We like to have him around, right? At wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, who's about to get paid massively. He's on the roster. KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison. Those are our number 1, 2, and 3 receivers going into the year. Jalen Naylor made the roster. He had a pretty decent preseason, at least that first game, and then he didn't play the rest of the way, dealing with a little bit of an injury. Jalen Reagor also made the roster. However, teams are calling to potentially trade for him today. There was a trade deadline, I do believe. I'm not sure when it starts back up, but there's still that option out there to trade Jalen Reagor, which would be interesting to see what we would get in return. Hopefully it's an offensive lineman. Hopefully. And then Brandon Powell also made the roster at wide receiver. At tight end, TJ Hawkinson and Josh Oliver are 1 and 2. Johnny Munt and Nick Muse also made the roster. Nick Muse had a really, really awesome preseason. That first game, Nick Mullins sliced and diced, moved down the field, threw it to him in the back of the end zone, made a spectacular catch. I'm really glad that he made the roster. So those are our 4 tight ends. At offensive line, we're looking not great, but we're okay, right? If this squad stays healthy, I think our Minnesota Vikings are going to have a fantastic season. But again, we've talked about it. Our depth at offensive line, not great at all. Right now we have Kristen Darrisaw, left tackle, Ezra Cleveland, left guard, Garrett Bradbury at center, Ed Ingram at right guard, and then Brian O'Neill at right tackle. Our backup, our bench for the offensive lineman, Austin Schlottman. He played last year, had to step in for Garrett Bradbury, who was injured. I believe he also stepped in a little bit for Brian O'Neill, but that might have been the guy that I'm about to say, Oli Udoh, and obviously Blake Brandel. These guys made the roster. We still need to add another piece there. I'm hoping for Dalton Risner. We haven't heard much on that situation. Maybe he's off the table. Maybe we trade Jalen Reagor for a decent offensive lineman and kind of help that position group out just a wee bit. So that's our 53, or that's our roster on the offensive side of the ball. Now let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. At defensive line, okay, Harrison Phillips obviously made it. Dean Lowry, Kyrus Tonga, Jonathan Bullard, and Jacqueline Roy all made the roster on our defensive line, which is kind of what I expected. Yesterday we did release Ross Blacklock, which was kind of a surprise. I thought he would have been beat out Jacqueline Roy, but that was not the case. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. At edge rusher, Daniil Hunter gets paid, gets a new contract for this season. He's definitely going to stay a Viking. Ivan Pace Jr., what a guy. I absolutely loved what I seen him out of him in preseason. The only thing I'm a little worried about is that he over pursues every once in a while, but that can be fixed. He flies around, he doesn't stop till that whistle is blown, and he's going to make a lot of plays for our Minnesota Vikings. Also, Brian Asamoah, I jumped the gun. I was talking about linebacker. But anyways, you got what I said out of Ivan Pace. But finishing with the edge rusher, Patrick Jones II. He's going to make the team. We've seen him from time to time again, given some breathers out here. He's a really good depth piece. Marcus Davenport, we brought over this offseason from the New Orleans Saints. I'm excited to see what he brings to this defense. Hopefully, it's something good, right? DJ Wanham also Played a little bit last year and the year before that. I think he shows a lot of promise. He has a higher ceiling than people are maybe expecting he does. I'm glad that he stayed. Andre Carter II comes from Army, gets assigned with an NFL team, so I'm glad to see him on the roster. I wasn't sure if he was going to make the team, but I did have hopes that he was going to because of his highlights that I seen out of college. Now let's talk about those linebackers. We got to Ivan Pace Jr. He was always going to make the team, especially after that preseason show out, basically. Jordan Hicks made the roster. Brian Asamoah and Troy Dye are our linebackers this year. We could need some help at that linebacker position, but who knows with what Brian Flores is going to utilize. I mean, we could put in some of the safeties. Josh Metellus could play a little bit of a kind of a spy linebacker, however you want to say it, maybe in the nickel package. I mean, there's plenty of options that we can use at linebacker, so we're not, kind of screwed, basically. At DB or corner, we have Byron Murphy Jr., brought him over from the Cardinals. He was always going to make the roster. Didn't even play preseason. Caleb Evans, he is stepping up in a massive way. Those are probably our 1 and 2 as of right now. Mekhi Blackman, probably going to be our number 3 corner this season. So those 3 so far made it. Andrew Jr., didn't like what I seen too much out of him. I think he performed okay. Not the greatest, not what we expected when we drafted him, in the 2nd or 3rd round, whatever it was. Can't remember off the top of my head, but he made the roster. And Najee Thompson, special teams stallion, if you will, made the roster. I'm glad that was the case because he did get injured on one of the punt returns, I do believe, in week 2 of the preseason or something like that. So I'm glad that he actually got a chance to say, hey, I'm on the Minnesota Vikings. 53-man roster. Okay, I made a team. I made an NFL team. At safety, Harrison Smith. Okay, that's a gimme. Cameron Bynum also made the roster. Another gimme. Josh Metellus, another gimme because he was labeled as a captain last season. Lewis Seen, another gimme. Jay Ward, a lot of fans loved what they want or what they have seen out of Jay Ward. They wanted him to make the roster, and he has, at least at this point. And also Theo Jackson, some good depth there at safety. And at corner, we're looking pretty solid on the secondary, even though it might seem a little young and people have their doubts about us. I don't think there's any doubts, okay? As of right now, on paper, I'm liking what I'm seeing. All right, and then our kicker and punter, Greg the Leg Joseph. And, big boot, Ryan Wright as our punter. I'm excited for this season. Cannot wait. We don't really need to talk about the long snapper, even though it is, I think, Andrew Laporta or something like that. Don't really care too much, even though he is a crucial part in snapping the rock to the kicker or to the punter. But that is our initial 53-man roster. Things can change. The waiver wire is real. Okay, I believe we're like 24th on the waiver wire or something like that, so we don't have first dibs by any means, but our team can still change. Our roster can still change. Jalen Reagor could get traded, so there's a lot of things that can still happen, but this is our initial 53-man roster. If you need to look back, you can scroll back on this video. You can go to the Vikings NFL page, Vikings.com, and get it there as well. But look, you guys let me know in the comments what you think about the initial 53-man roster. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It'd be much appreciated. Have a great rest of your night, folks, and Skol Vikes.